the NBA draft is tonight, and we've been talking about it throughout the week. The Mavericks sitting there at number 5. Will they move up? Will they get the man they want there at number 5? Whoever they get, they're going to say they got the man that they wanted probably when it's all said and done. But it's a big, big pick for the Mavericks tonight.
Well, since we were talking about it yesterday, there are more rumors, and some of them involving the Mavericks, some of them involving other teams. Phoenix at number 1 is not going to do anything. They're not trading that pick. They are going to take DeAndre Ayton. From 2 to 10, it's anybody's guess as to what might happen. And the Mavericks are involved because the Mavericks have their eye on Luka Doncic. Let's start with his name. There are 7 or 8 different ways to pronounce it. I think I found the pronunciation. It is Doncic. Doncic.
Yeah, I've heard both.
Like Cheech, but Chich. Now, they say that in Serbia it's Cheech, but everybody here calls him Chich. And I think for the next 15 years, we're going to be talking about him a lot. And it sounds like, according to him, it's Chich. He's fine with Doncic.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a lot like Nowitzki. You're going to hear both.
Another tie-in there.
They want Luka Doncic, but they're going to have to move up to get him. He's not going to fall to 5. They could move up to 4, but as we talked about last week, if you're going to do a deal with Memphis is going to require that whatever team they do a deal with, that team has to take Chandler Parsons off their hands.
No.
He has $50 million due the next 2 seasons. You know, I was very much against Chandler Parsons ever being a Maverick, and I was certainly against the Mavericks giving him a big free agent deal to stay. And that proved to be right because Chandler Parsons in Memphis has been an absolute disaster, and Memphis wants to get rid of him. So if I'm Dallas, that is not an option. You cannot go back. You dodged the Chandler Parsons bullet. It would be pure insanity, no matter how much you like Luka Doncic, to take Chandler Parsons back for 2 more years at $25 million a year. You cannot go down that road again.
No. If it was less than and it was going to expire after this year, maybe. But no, I wouldn't do that.
So if Doncic happens to fall to 4, I think the Mavericks have to let that ship sail, and they just let whoever's going to trade with Memphis or let Memphis take him. Whatever happens, happens. And you stay put at 5. There's the talk that we discussed yesterday about moving up to 3, and we were wondering what that would take. Well, if Atlanta is going to trade that 3rd pick, they're going to want a draft pick or 2 in return, and they're going to want an asset in return. But apparently they're also going to want to unload a big contract, and that is the contract of Kent Bazemore, $37 million over the next 2 seasons. Now, at the very least, he's been more productive than Chandler Parsons. He'll score 10 to 14 a game, something like that, but he's not a very good player. He's not worth that money. And again, if it's me running the Mavericks, unless I think Doncic is the next LeBron, I don't think I'm doing this. I don't think I'm moving up to take him there. As I said yesterday, there's one sure bet in this draft, and I think it's Ayton, and after that, everybody has questions, including Doncic. I'm not moving up for a guy with questions.
Yeah.
So I would say no to making that deal with Atlanta. But I do think if the Mavericks move, it will be to 3. I don't see them moving to 4. I think people would want to burn down the American Airlines Center if Chandler Parsons returned at that price. So I don't think they move to 4. They're the Mavericks. They could surprise all of us. Could they possibly move down? Well, there's all sorts of talk about the Knicks wanting to move up because the Knicks apparently like Mo Bamba. And Bamba is seen as going somewhere from 4 to 7, somewhere in there. And the Knicks have the number 9 pick. They're eyeing moving up to 4 with Memphis, but they don't want Parsons either, but they may take him just because they like Bamba so much. I guess there's the possibility they could pick up the phone and call Dallas. And Dallas could actually move down. But again, I think Mavs fans would burn down the American Airlines Center if they move down. I actually don't think that's a bad idea for the Mavericks because I think from 3 or 4, let's say from 4 to 9, I think the players are all kind of the same.
Don't you think there's a chance, though, that somebody like Bamba or Carter would have a much higher ceiling than, I don't know, on down the line, Colin Sexton or somebody like that?
Well, let's go
Robinson.
to my small big board, George.
Okay.
Because this is what I think of the top 10 picks. These are the 10 guys that I have as the best, and this is where I have them in order. And so this is the board that I think the Mavericks should follow. I bet they have their own board, but I would like it if they followed this board. Of course, number 1 is DeAndre Ayton. He is the only guy in my 83 years of watching basketball that has ever, to me, physically resembled Wilt Chamberlain. There's never been another center that looks like Wilt. I'm not saying he's going to be Wilt. Nobody will ever be Wilt. I'm not saying he's going to come close to being that kind of player. I'm just saying when I look at him, the legs, the waist, the shoulders, he looks like Wilt Chamberlain at that age.
He's really strong.
A young Wilt. And there's never been a big man that looked like Wilt. Shaq didn't look like Wilt. Duncan didn't look like Wilt. Akeem didn't look like Wilt. Kareem didn't look like Wilt.
No.
Wilt had that body, and Ayton has that body, and maybe that's why I like him so much. But everybody likes Ayton. He's the consensus number 1.
Can't miss.
I have Doncic number 2, and I like him for a lot of reasons. I think he has the highest upside. I think in this, as we talked about yesterday at this time, in the new NBA, the positionless NBA, I think his size and his game are, of all the draft picks available tonight, I think he's the best suited for the new NBA. A guy that size that can run the court, that can play many positions, that can pass the way he does. I think he's the best piece for the new NBA. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I have him number 2. I have Marvin Bagley number 3. I'm a little worried about his attitude, but I think his talent is the best of the rest.
Looks like he could be a 20-10 guy, 20-9 guy with no problem.
Yep, I think so. Number 4, I have Wendell Carter. This is the guy that I think the Mavericks are going to be in a position to pick, and this is the guy that I want them to pick because I think he has the complete game. He's got a very sound, well-rounded, fundamental offensive game, and he can play defense, and he can rebound. I like Wendell Carter a lot, and the way I see the draft falling, if the Mavericks stay at 5, I think Ayton goes 1. It sounds like Bagley is definitely going 2 to the Kings. I think Doncic would go 3. Probably at 4 will be Jaren Jackson, or if the Knicks work that deal with Memphis, it could be Mo Bamba. I think Wendell Carter is going to be there for the Mavericks at 5. And
most NBA-ready big guy going right outside of Ayton.
And that's who I think they should take.
Yeah.
I am afraid that they may take Jaren Jackson if he's still there, because I think a lot of people see Jaren Jackson as a sure thing, or I think they may take Mo Bamba. And Mo Bamba, I'll say this, I don't particularly like him. He's a definite top 7 pick, though, in my book. I have him number 7 on my small board. And I think he does have great upside. I smell Nerlens Noel Part 2.
Could be.
I think he's better than Noel was at this stage, and I feel better about him than I did Noel coming out, but I fear another Nerlens Noel. So on my board, I've got Ayton, Doncic, Bagley, Carter, Jackson I have 5. I have Trae Young 6, and I say forget about his shooting. Take him for his passing. I worry about his size. I worry about him defensively. I'm not sure he's the shooter everybody thinks he is, but I think he will be able to score because I love how he gets to the rim. He'll be a good shooter. I just don't know if he's Steph Curry like everybody thinks. I take him for his passing. I've got him 6. I have Mo Bamba 7. I have Mikal Bridges 8. He won 2 titles with Villanova. That means a lot to me. Mm-hmm. I have Michael Porter 9. As we talked about, he scares me, and I've got Colin Sexton 10. So if I'm the Mavericks, what I'm rooting for the Mavericks tonight is to stay at 5, don't take one of those disgusting contracts, and take Wendell Carter.
I'd be happy with that. Or Jaren Jackson. I think either one of those would be really good for them.
I'm okay with Jaren Jackson. I like Carter better, but I'm okay with Jaren Jackson. Again, all of those guys from 2 to 10, I would say each one of them has a big question mark. So you're rolling the dice with any of those guys. I would like Carter. I would be okay with Jackson. I would worry about Young or Bamba.
And I bet that's where they stay because I think they'll, unless they're just totally in love with Doncic and they feel like he is going to be a 10-year All-Star, I think they feel like, let's just chill out and wait right here. We're going to get a really good player.
And my steal of the draft, I said this during the NCAA tournament, and I'm going to mention it again here this morning because he will probably go at the end of the first round. I believe that's where he's projected by most of the mocks. Whoever drafts Jalen Brunson is going to get a hell of a player. I will promise you that right now, and I'm going to tell it to your face. I think Jalen Brunson is going to be a solid NBA pro for 10 to 15 years. I love his mindset. I love his basketball IQ. He's not the quickest point guard. He's a little undersized, but I think Jalen Brunson is a badass. And I think
basketball player.
I think whoever takes him at the end of the first round tonight is going to be really happy with that pick.
Who knows? Maybe he'll be available early second round.
Who knows?
You could bounce out of the first round. Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, we'll see what happens tonight. NBA draft. Our coverage here on the ticket starts at 6 o'clock. Good morning. It is 5:36 here on Sports Radio 1310 and 96.7 FM, The Ticket. You got the Morning Musers on a Friday. George Dunham, Craig Miller, Gordon Keith. And it's the morning after the NBA draft. And it looks like a pretty darn good haul for your Dallas Mavericks. You never know how a draft pick is going to turn out, especially when they're 19 years old. But the Mavericks get the guy that we've been talking about throughout the week. Would they actually be able to trade up? Would it be worth trading up? And they did. They swung the deal with Atlanta to get Luka Doncic. We'll talk about him this morning. The player that Junior was really excited about. A number of other people really like him, fell to the Mavericks in the second round. A local player also goes to him in the second round. It's a really interesting draft to break down, and we'll do that here this morning. Some ancillary items from last night, including the Mavericks' number one draft pick's mom. A little uncomfortable here in 25 minutes. And we'll also hear throughout the morning what the Mavericks had to say about their draft haul. And we have Donnie Nelson on the show this morning at 8:55.
Dunham and Miller.
Good morning. It is just past 6 o'clock here on Sports Radio 1310 and 96.7 FM, The Ticket. You got the Morning Musers here on a Friday morning, Giorgio Jr. and Gordo. We'll talk plenty about the NBA draft, how the first round fell. Fell perfectly for the Mavericks in the first few picks, and they made the deal. We'll get to that here in 15 minutes. Hear what some of the organization has to say about Luka Doncic at 6:55. We also have Donnie Nelson on the show at 8:55 to talk about last night, what looks to be a big haul for the Mavericks. We'll see. Time will always tell with a draft. But this is all about the draft. It's the NBA draft last night. Tonight, it's the NHL draft. We broadcast here from Victory Park, right next to the American Airlines Center, and the Dallas Stars hosting the NHL draft tonight. And they have Victory Plaza blocked off this morning. There's all sorts of interactive games for fans to participate in during the day and then tonight during the draft. Gordo will be happy to know they are calling this Fan Fest.
I saw that branding out there.
And if you have tickets to Fan Fest, you're in for a big day today. That's pretty cool. NBA draft last night and the NHL draft will emanate live here from Dallas and here from Victory Park. And last night was quite a show. Hopefully you got a chance to listen to our draft coverage here on the ticket. Thought Norm and Jake and Monty did a really nice job. I was watching on TV and listening to their coverage. They did a really nice job in explaining not only the Mavericks and their prospects, but the rest of the NBA. And that is quite a show right before the draft when all the players come out, and they've got some serious threads on. And I guess it was started by LeBron, but carried on last night. We had the shorts look, the suit with the shorts look thrown out by your guy from Oklahoma.
It's a bad look.
You know, I think it is too, but I wonder if this is going to catch on when you get a kid like Young, who a lot of kids really like, and if he is a successful NBA player, LeBron threw it down, and I heard some kids saying, man, I thought that was pretty cool looking.
It's the British schoolboy look.
I know. I think it looks ridiculous too, but if you're really cool, and if you're LeBron or you're an upcoming star in the NBA, I have to say when I see it, it's like they're able to pull it off. It doesn't look that like if I wore that, people would just die laughing.
I don't think it's going to catch on. In fact, I think that Trae Young is going to be like Emmitt Smith down the road. When Emmitt looks back at draft day and sees the polka dot overalls that he wore, he's thoroughly embarrassed. And when we bring it up, he doesn't even like to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think in 20 years, when Trae Young looks back, he's going to be really embarrassed that he wore that to the draft.
He just really loves AC/DC, that's all.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like that.
The Angus Young look.
Why do British schoolboys wear suits with shorts? What is the deal? Is that comfortable?
Well, you want to be formal, but you also want to show that you can party too, I guess.
Okay.
Maybe it's that thing. Yeah, and I guess it's more comfortable. That does make sense to wear the suit in the summertime, to have shorts. It would make it, I think, a lot cooler.
Just don't wear the suit.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. We'll see if that goes and becomes a big-time fashion trend, or, yeah, if we look back at 2018, laugh at LeBron and laugh at Young. And there was something else that was really confusing last night, and this is something that the Mavericks' number one draft pick, Luka Doncic, will have to deal with probably in the locker room, on the road, from opponents. When he was introduced last night with that third overall pick, he stood up, he went to his left, and there's a very attractive woman that he hugged, and then you thought, wow, it's a little older woman, but she's very attractive that he's dating. And then she gave him a kiss on the cheek, and then you saw him turn to his right and hug an older gentleman, and you went, wow, those are his parents? That's his mom? Did that cause confusion with you, or you just right in with, oh, that's clearly his mom when you first saw her?
I didn't judge her on her looks or anything. I just thought it was
you hadn't even seen her yet.
I have too.
At the beginning of the draft, they introduced all of the picks, and they all came down the stairs, and they were all escorted. And at that point, when they introduced Luka Doncic, he came down the stairs with two women, and one was his mom, and the other one was his grandmother. And
I missed his big grand entrance. Maybe that was it.
That's how they introduced them. And I got to say, I had a tough time telling which was which. The grandmother looked great for being however old she is. But yeah, the mom is a former model, and she owns a very successful salon in Serbia. And last night on Twitter, I planted our flag. We have dibs on a weekly Mirjam Potterband show.
Yeah, that's her name.
That's his mother's name.
Mirjam Potterband.
The former model, current hot MILF.
Whoa.
Okay, man. So where in the world are they from?
Serbia?
What's
Slovenia.
with it?
Slovenia.
What is the deal?
Oh, Slovenia. Sorry, yeah.
What's the deal?
Why?
That part of the
messed
world?
up?
No, that part. Why are all these hot women from over there? That is, I swear they have more hot women per capita than anywhere else in the world. Not necessarily that particular country, but
Eastern Europe.
Right.
Russia. The other countries that I can't keep straight are Slovenia and Slovakia.
Yeah, they need to both change their names.
I can't tell those apart. But yeah, she's extremely hot, and she kind of broke Twitter last night.
Yeah. Even other NBA players, Andre Iguodala said, wow, mom's decent.
Decent.
And you just, I feel for him because I think he will hear some of that on the court. You know, those guys talk about each other's moms anyway, but I think that maybe lends to more conversation about your mom if she looks like that. And that's really unfortunate.
Do female basketball players talk about each other's dads like that, trash talking?
No.
Why not?
Trash talk.
They're more evolved.
I don't know about that, Fernando.
I think it's more they're not attracted to men.
Whoa.
You can look that up.
Okay.
What's your
What do I
what's
look
your
up?
website?
Lookitup.com.
Altrightstormtrooper.com. Is that what you're going to?
Whoa.
I don't think other NBA players are going to be bringing up his mother.
Oh, yeah. They bring each other's mom up anyway.
Jokingly. I don't think they're not going to go there. He's not going to
Look what the
have
hard
someone,
line does
he's
to
not going to
Jake.
have someone guarding him saying, hey, man, I'd really like to do your mom.
Ooh.
They're not going to say that.
Well, they may not say it
They'll
like
use
that,
it,
but they'll
say it a little harsher than that, in fact.
yeah, they might. Anyway, just a few unusual moments from last night in the NBA draft. Tonight's the NHL draft right here from Victory Park. And up next, we'll talk about how the first round fell and how Luka Doncic fell right into the Mavericks' lap.
This is the most exciting morning in Mavericks' recent history since the morning after they won the title in 2011, because that draft last night I thought was sensational for Dallas. My favorite Mavs draft of all time was 1981 when they got Aguirre and Blackman, and I'm almost as excited about last night's haul.
Well, I am too. And you always stop yourself, don't you, after a draft, because you just think, well, you don't know. We think we know, but we don't know. And even the Mavericks front office thinks they know, but we'll find out in time if they really do. But just the fact that it fell like that scenario we've been talking about so much in the last 48 hours before the draft, DeAndre Ayton going first like everyone expected, Marvin Bagley going second to the Kings like everyone expected, and then that pivotal pick at number 3 held by Atlanta. Would they make a trade? Would the Mavericks be willing to make a trade and give up a future first-round pick? They were, and they were able to swing the deal, and that means that by many draft experts, the Mavericks get the second or maybe the best player in this draft. We'll see. I think most think that Ayton is a can't-miss and seems to be very well equipped for the NBA. But, boy, we've all read so much about Doncic and heard people just talking about his upside and what it could be like, and it fell just like we talked about going into the draft. And it seems like, just my own perception of the draft, it seems like that rarely happens.
The price that the Mavericks had to pay to move up, in my opinion, was minimal, and I couldn't believe that they had to pay so little to swap spots. But the deal is, every team looks at every prospect differently. And Atlanta's Luka Doncic was Trae Young. That's the guy they wanted. So they thought, well, let's get something a little extra because I don't think anybody else wants him at 3. Mm-hmm. So they worked the deal with Dallas. So Dallas gets the guy they wanted. Atlanta gets the guy they wanted. And all Dallas had to give to swap those picks was a protected future first rounder. If it's 1 through 5 next year, the Mavericks get to keep it. And by the way, I think there's a chance it'll be 1 through 5 next year, because anybody expecting Doncic, as much as I love him and love what the Mavs did, anybody expecting him to come in next year and light it up, tap the brakes on that. He's 19, and he's not played at this level before. He's going to be great. I'm pretty sure about that. But I also think there's a decent chance they get 1 through 5 again next year, depending on what happens in free agency. And if not, if they ship that pick to Atlanta next year and it's 6, that'll hurt a little bit. 6 or 7, that'll hurt. But it's not going to hurt that much if Doncic turns out to be what everybody thinks he's going to be. And that's all you had to do. You didn't have to take the Bazemore contract back. You didn't have to work a deal with anybody else. You didn't have to give up any other draft picks. I just thought it was the bare minimum to pay to move up a protected future first. That's a steal for Dallas if Doncic turns out to be that guy.
Yeah. And there are so many interesting stories in this first round, and we had these players projected, wondering where they would go. And one of them you brought up yesterday when we were talking about him, Jalen Brunson. And as you said, probably a late first-round pick, but you just love him, does a lot of different things. A winner at Villanova, 2-time national championship winner, won just about every award there was this past year in college basketball. And at the end of that segment, I said, and he could bounce into the second round. Who knows? Maybe he's there when the Mavericks pick at 33. And I'll be doggone if he wasn't there last night for the Mavericks at 33.
When we did our draft segment, Jalen Brunson was my sleeper. I think Jalen Brunson is going to be a great pro. I'm not sure he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but I think what the Mavericks got in the second round is a solid, incredibly high basketball IQ, always takes the right shot, always makes the right pass, really, really tough point guard. And yes, they have a point guard in Dennis Smith, but to me, Jalen Brunson is Dennis Smith's perfect backup. And Jalen Brunson can be what J.J. Barea has been for this team. I see him as an immediate Barea replacement. And Brunson just brings the it factor. He's a winner, and he's smart. And I think every team needs a guy like that. He's undersized, and he's slow. I get all of that. That was not an athletic draft for the Mavericks last night. Doncic is not athletic by NBA standards. Brunson is not athletic by NBA standards. But they're both incredibly high basketball IQ guys, and that always overcomes a lack of athleticism.
Then you throw in a local player, Shake Milton, from SMU at the end of the second round, and the brother of the Greek Freak with pick number 60. I can't remember. When's the last time we talked about a Maverick draft like this where you just had some anticipation to it?
Well, now, they didn't get Shake Milton. That was part of that deal with Philadelphia.
Oh, that was part of the deal with Philadelphia. Okay.
Yeah, so that would have made it the ultimate perfect draft for me because I
really like Shake.
I'm very high on Shake. But no, they dealt Shake Milton. That was part of that deal. So they got Raymond Spalding and the Greek Freak's brother, Costas.
Okay, yeah. That happened about the time I was turning in last night. So, yeah. But I think Shake Milton's going to be a terrific player. That's too bad that he's not going to be a part of the Mavericks roster. But yes, those.
By the way, the Mavericks have a history of taking the superstar's sibling, Seth Curry.
Yeah.
We get Seth, not Steph. We get Costas, not Giannis.
Yeah, that's a bit of a bummer. A couple of other notes quickly about the first round. We'll talk about Brunson and Doncic in great detail and hear some of what Donnie and Carlisle had to say last night. That swap with the Mavericks and Atlanta 5-3, and Trae Young taken by the Mavericks, but going to Atlanta. So he goes 5th overall. Oklahoma becomes the first school to produce a top 10 NFL, Major League Baseball, and NBA draft in the same year since 2006. It was another Big 12 team that did it that year. Texas with Vince Young, Michael Huff, and LaMarcus Aldridge. Pretty incredible. And the Major League Baseball pick was Drew Stubbs. Mo Bamba, who we talked about a lot, from Texas. This shocked me. He is the 11th first-round pick from Texas since 2006.
It's a lot.
That is a lot, with not a lot of NCAA tournament success in there. Nothing on John Calipari. Dating back to his time at Memphis, he now has a top 10 NBA pick in each of the last 11 years.
I didn't like that. I didn't like Calipari being there and Williams being there, and who else did I see there?
Jay Wright was there.
Wright was there. Somebody else was there. Another big name was there. I don't like that. Coaches there for recruiting photo ops. Are they there because they love that player? Izzo was there. Yeah. Are they there because they love that player, or are they there for the recruiting photo so that all these other recruits around the country say, wow, look, he puts guys into the NBA. He puts guys into the top 10. Oh, I want to go there. That's why Izzo was there. That's why Calipari was there.
Yeah, I guess the player may call him and say, hey, coach, I want you there. But they're gladly ready to accept.
They're there for the recruiting photo op.
Yeah. Well, and Calipari can say that, hey, your gateway to the NBA is here. Mm-hmm. I get top 10 picks.
I don't blame them for being there. I'm just saying I'm on to them. I know why they're there. They're not there to hug the kid because they're that happy for their one and done leaving
all
the
the
school.
time they spent there.
That is 100% for recruiting.
Well, it was interesting, and we'll talk more about the Mavericks Hall coming up at 6:55 and why Maverick fans should be pretty darn excited. 6:55 on the ticket. You got the Morning Musers. Muse in the News with Gordo, 7:15. Scatter Shooting with Junior at 7:35, and here in 1 hour, it's the emergency break of the week. We both think Maverick fans should be excited this morning. This looks like a really interesting draft for the Mavs and potentially a blockbuster draft for the Mavericks. I did hear from a couple of friends last night who said, oh, great, the Mavs take another white Euro player. This is not Bruno Sundorf the Mavericks traded up to get in Luka Doncic. Now, is he Dirk? We'll see. I just know he's a top 3 pick, and that's pretty unusual in Maverick history. Doncic, number 3 last night after the deal with Atlanta. Jason Kidd, number 2 in 1994. Mark Aguirre, number 1 overall in 1981. That's the only time the Mavericks have had a pick in the top 3. And the draft experts around the country, it's not as if they're saying that was a real stretch for the Mavericks to take Doncic. Heck, some of them have this guy as the best player in the draft.
Yesterday when we did our draft preview, I thought that he was the best player in terms of fitting into the new NBA. I would have taken DeAndre Ayton number 1 overall, but I had Doncic number 2 on my board. I think he was the second best overall player, but the best in terms of the new NBA. How Magic first and then LeBron revolutionized the league, and now you've got every team looking for a Ben Simmons type. Someone who is in the 6'7" to 7 foot range, that can play a bunch of different positions, that can stretch the floor, that can handle the ball. 7-footers now have to be able to handle the ball, that can get to the rim, that can pass. It's just a different game now. And to me, Luka Doncic, out of all of these guys who are available in the top 10, best fit that bill. He's 6'7", 6'8". He can play point. He could play 2. He could play 3. He may be able to play 4. Hell, I don't even know what a 4 is anymore. Dirk revolutionized the 4, so he might even be able to play 4, but he can play 3 positions for sure. And he's a phenomenal passer. They felt like he was the best passer in the draft last night on the ESPN coverage. I think Trae Young was the best passer in the draft, but I think Doncic was second. He does have that innate ability, a feel for the floor, that great vision. He can shoot. He's being called a taller version of Steve Nash. You know, that kind of passing ability, that kind of floor leader. I think he's going to fit in perfectly with Dennis Smith. I think he's going to fit in perfectly with Rick Carlisle and what Carlisle likes to do. If there is a concern about him, it's his athleticism. You know, when you look at him, he's not cut at all. He doesn't look like an athlete.
Right.
But when he gets in motion, he can do some athletic things. And Rick Carlisle said that last night. They got to work a little bit on his athleticism. But I would say his incredibly high basketball IQ, the fact that he can shoot and pass, that will overcome any lack of athleticism.
Let's hear some of what they said last night. We're going to have Donnie Nelson on at 8:55, but the comparisons will be there to Dirk 19 years later. Here's a 19-year-old Euro taken by the Mavericks, and he says, yes, there will be comparisons, but he is not going to make the same mistake his dad made when he was overhyping Dirk before his rookie season.
I'm not going to make the same mistake we did 20 years ago, because he is an 18-year-old kid that is going to have his rear end handed to him. He is going to go against the elite of the elite, not only, outside our walls, but within our training camp. And so he's got his work cut out. There's a whole different level from where he's played to where he's about to play. But he absolutely has the right stuff. He's fearless. He makes his teammates better. Work ethic is great. So he's got all the right stuff to be a very, very special player.
And if you go back to Dirk's rookie year, there were times where we thought, man, is this guy any good? Mm-hmm. But there were also moments where you went, wow, that's different. A big guy like that who can knock down threes and and do some of the things that Dirk could do running the floor. So I think you'll have some of that this year with Doncic.
I think Donnie's exactly right, and I think Mavericks fans need to tap the brakes on next season. Let him surprise you, but don't expect that Doncic is going to come in here and score 20 a game and dish out 10 assists a game. It's probably not going to happen. In fact, he may be lucky to get to half of those totals. He may not be a 10-5 guy next year. He's going to start. Rick Carlisle has said that, but he's 19. And we all know Dirk's first year was rough, and a 19-year-old coming from Europe who is not athletic to begin with is not going to come in here and set the league on fire, I don't think. At least that should be your expectation. Like Donnie said, he's going to get his ass handed to him.
Yeah.
But that's part of the process. And the thing that excites me the most about this pick is I'm so excited to watch him grow. If they had taken Bamba, I would not have been that excited to watch him grow, or any of those other guys. But I think the growth chart for this guy is going to be really exciting, and it's going to be really extreme. And I think watching him develop over the next couple of years, and then maybe in year 3 or year 4, he is that guy. He is a Dirk-type player. The upside, and when watching him try to get to the upside, is going to be fantastic. Just don't expect it next year. Don't put that kind of pressure on this guy. He's coming to a bad team anyway.
Right.
So maybe he's Larry Bird, and in year 1, he turns them into this incredible team. Maybe, but probably not. But eventually, he could be a superstar.
You mentioned the question about his athleticism. That was brought up to Rick Carlisle last night.
I believe he's going to prove to be a deceptively good athlete in the NBA. And I know this, that guys that have his level of skill become more athletic because of how you got to run at them at the three-point line and beyond because of their shooting ability. So, again, I think you look at his record and the accomplishments that he has at this young age, and this is a guy that's proven he can get better. He can play with the best.
They have these knocks against him, and I guess when you see him, he doesn't look as electric and explosive as some American players. But to me, from what I've seen of him, a little bit of what Carlisle mentioned there about being deceptive, kind of like Ginobili, very hard to guard.
Yes.
Looks like, at least over there, it looks like a lot of guys had a tough time staying with him, thinking that they had him guarded. Then on a couple of quick steps here, and he's got a shot off, or he's able to drive the ball.
To me, Ginobili is more athletic. He was more. You just look at him; he was more cut. He was more like a soccer player, and quicker, I think, than Doncic. But Magic was not athletic. Magic Johnson was not this cut specimen who was the lightning fast or anything like that. But Magic was such a great passer. Ginobili such a great passer. And that makes you more athletic. That makes you so much harder to guard. And that's what I think Doncic is going to be like.
Well, and there's the other part of the game, too, the mental makeup. And that's another thing that Carlisle was glowing about last night.
Very impressed with his disposition, his humility, understanding of the game, just kind of a sincere glow about the opportunity to come and play, for an NBA franchise. And my sense is that, he'll come in with the right level of respect. But I don't think he's going to be scared of anybody.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've heard nothing but good things about him as a locker room guy, as a leader, as a hard worker. All the things you hear about him, about his mental makeup, get you more excited about him too.
The thing that really excites me about this Mavericks draft is I think in the first round, they got the best basketball player available. When you take everything into consideration, when you just would line them all up and say, who's a baller, I think they got the best basketball player available, and I think they got the best basketball player available in the second round. I think Jalen Brunson is just the best player. Like, if I'm picking sides, I think I'm taking those two guys because I know that they're going to make others around them better. I know they're going to make the right decisions. More so with Brunson. It's going to be a learning curve with Doncic on making the right decisions at this level. but I just feel like they got such solid guys, winners. Both of those guys at such a young age are so highly decorated with championship trophies. It's ridiculous. And then they both will make the right decisions. They're both going to be very coachable. They're going to be great teammates. Both of them get off more on the pass than on making a shot, which I think is, it's what I love about LeBron. It's a rare quality these days in the NBA. I do understand the people that are skeptical because the NBA has been looking for the next Dirk since Dirk. The Mavericks have been looking for the next Dirk since Dirk. And for every Dirk, which there's only one, there are 10 Darko Milicic picks. He was the second overall pick behind LeBron, and everybody thought this is the next Dirk. He's 7 feet tall, and he can shoot, and he can do all this stuff. And he was one of the colossal busts in recent NBA draft history. And so whenever you see a name that has a lot of chiches in it, I think people see Doncic and they think, oh, I wonder if he's just another one of those Eastern European guys who's going to come over here and can't play. Everybody chases them because of Dirk. I think he's different. I really do. I really think he's a much better basketball player than a lot of these guys that have been taken in the top 10 in the last 20 years who completely flamed out. I think he's better, but time will tell.
And you got to be careful, too, as a Maverick fan, when you start thinking, okay, if all they say is true about Doncic and now Brunson, you throw in Dennis Smith, Harrison Barnes, playoffs next year? No, I don't think so. And that brings us to free agency. And Rick Carlisle said, hey, July 1st is right around the corner, bro. We'll address it. There will be options. There are options out there. If you added a Clint Capella or Julius Randle, maybe pipe dreams along with DeAndre Jordan, then do you start talking about, wow, they could be a vastly improved team if you went out and got a big man to run with these guys.
I don't think it's time for that because I don't see the addition of any of those guys, including Cousins, as elevating Dallas to a top 4 team in the West. I still think they're so far from that. I loved what they did last night. It's one of my favorite drafts in Mavs history, but I want them to take this at the proper speed. And to me, if you add even DeMarcus Cousins to that team next year, I don't know, what are they, the 7th best team in the West? I mean,
best case scenario.
Teams in the West got better last night.
I still think you could miss the playoffs.
Yes. I just don't think it's time to go out and spend all your money in free agency this offseason on a center. To me, that's the finishing touch when everything else is right. When you know Dennis Smith and Doncic and maybe one other guy, when you know they're ready and they've arrived and you're sure about them, you're sure that they're stars or superstars, that's when you put the finishing touches on with an athletic big man or whatever position you need at that time. I'm afraid that if they try to get too far ahead of themselves, that they're going to set themselves back. So I loved last night, but I'm worried about free agency. I don't want them to ruin the maturation process of these guys. I want it to happen naturally.
Yeah. They do give the indication, though, they may be aggressive in free agency here in a couple of weeks.
I just thought what they gave up to move up was so minimal, and it was such a coup by Donnie. We've got him on the show at 8:55 this morning. Going in, we thought that they were going to have to take on a big contract or maybe give up an unprotected first or a second rounder or a couple of second rounders, and all they had to give up was a protected first. So if they're bad again next year, which they could be picking in the top 5 again, which would be great. Now, it's 1 through 5 that's protected in the next 2 years that Atlanta gets. If the Mavericks are the 6th worst team in the NBA next year, it's going to hurt. Yep. It's really going to hurt to have to give up that number 6 pick. But if Doncic is what they believe he'll be, then it was definitely worth it. That's the other thing I find really funny about this. We all think the Mavericks got a steal and got a great player. Everybody's excited about him. Atlanta didn't like him.
No.
They like Trae Young more.
If he's that great, they could have taken him right there.
Doesn't Atlanta have a bunch of big basketball brains in the room anyway? Although I do believe Atlanta is basketball hell. But anyway, they supposedly have a bunch of guys that make a lot of money that make these decisions. If Doncic is a can't miss, they could have taken him.
Yeah.
but they didn't. They liked Trae Young better. I like Doncic way better than Trae Young, but Atlanta didn't. Here's an NBA team. By the way, the first two teams passed on him.
Right.
Now, everybody may have made a huge mistake. The Mavericks may have made a huge mistake. Who knows? I don't think so. I love what the Mavericks did, but I just think that's the comedic part of the science of drafting in any sport. You can think you got the guy, and another team thinks you made a huge mistake.
It's going to be an interesting revisit here in 3 or 4 years.
Coming up later this hour at 8:55, we're going to visit with Mavs GM Donnie Nelson. What a great morning to have Donnie on the show. This is one of the more exciting mornings in Mavericks draft history. I thought they knocked it out of the park last night. They got Luka Doncic, the Slovenian prodigy, the 19-year-old who could be the next big thing, who could be the best player in this draft. So not only is that exciting, but the fact that to move up to get him, they really didn't have to give up that much. Yesterday around this time, we were talking about, well, they might have to take on a huge contract, the Bazemore deal. They might have to give up multiple picks. They gave up a protected, mostly protected, future first-round pick. And it's protected 1 through 5 the next couple of years. If they have to give up the number 6 pick, that'll hurt a little bit. But if Doncic is what they believe he's going to be, it's going to be well worth it. So that had my basketball pants going crazy last night. And then I told you I thought the late first round, early second round sleeper of the draft, I said this yesterday, was going to be Jalen Brunson from Villanova. And I'll be damned if the Mavericks didn't get him in the second round.
How about that?
It was, I don't think I've been this excited about a Mavericks draft since '81 when they took Aguirre and Blackman. And I'm not saying that these two guys are going to be cornerstones like those two guys, but I think there's a chance. And I think in Brunson, they got a hell of a winner and a hell of a player. And I think in Doncic, they got a super talented kid that could turn into the next big thing. So I think the Mavericks get an A+. We have a lot of questions for Donnie, not only about these guys, but about what they do in free agency now. What is the speed of the rebuild? Where do they feel like they are in comparison to the other teams in the West? What did they expect out of Doncic? You just heard Donnie in the ticker, and we'll talk more about this, but I think it's smart for everybody to just be patient with the kid for the first year. Like Donnie said, he's going to get his ass handed to him. That's going to happen, but eventually the tables will turn. I don't expect him to come in and set the league on fire next year. I think next year could be a learning process, and I'm okay with that, especially if it results in another really good draft pick.
Yeah, I think they knocked it out of the park, too. Be interesting to see what Donnie has to say coming up here at 8:55. But right now, we get to last night's NBA draft, which was a big night for the Dallas Mavericks, able to swing a deal with the Atlanta Hawks and get the rights to the 3rd overall pick, Luka Doncic, a player that so many have been talking about going into the draft. And it looks like the Mavericks have hit a big home run. And here to talk about it with us is the Mavericks GM and President of Basketball Operations, Donnie Nelson. Good morning.
Gentlemen.
How we doing?
Top of the morning.
Well, what a big morning for you.
Morning, right?
Yeah, I think it is, yeah. And I'm sure you had a pretty short night. Yeah, I bet you had a short night after celebrating what looks to be a terrific draft for you. And you've been getting a lot of hype around the country of the Mavericks headed out of the park. It looks like they got the guy that they wanted. Just how thrilled were you when it was you worked it out with Atlanta to get the rights to get Doncic?
Sure. It literally went right up to, just before the pick. And so we knew, obviously it was, contingent on both guys being there, which we were confident. But once Trae went to 5 and, everything was consummated, just really, really excited. He's a young guy that has big upsides, got the ability to not only shoot the long ball, but, get into the paint and create. He's actually loves to pass. I mean, that's his thing. So to have another, playmaker to go alongside Dennis that likes to create is it's the way the modern game is going. And so we're just really, really excited.
And we were talking about it yesterday, and we thought that to move up, you might have to take on a big contract or you might have to give up more draft picks. And as it worked out, it looks like you played your hand perfectly, because it doesn't appear to me that giving up a protected future first is really that much to get the guy that you really wanted. You had to be, the moment that it was consummated, you had to think, all right, we played that as well as we could play it.
Well, it was certainly brought up, and that's, there's a lot of things on the table. There were some, contractual considerations that, obviously weren't perfect, and we preferred to steer away from. And so, we were able to dodge that, and then as it panned out, next year's draft isn't as rich as this one. And so you're always measuring those things. The protection went a little bit north of where we wanted it to go, but, we saved our second round pick, which was important because this draft went particularly deep, and to have a guy like Jalen fall down there to 33, that's almost like getting another, first round pick. And in next year's draft, a guy like Jalen, he'd probably be, he'd go a lot higher. So you're always measuring those things, but we feel really good about it. And, looking forward to the press conference today.
What do you think will be the biggest adjustment for Doncic coming to the American game in the NBA?
Certainly the first thing that Rick will address is the defensive side. It's just a whole different ball of wax. I think the caliber of athlete, that he goes up against on a night in, night out basis, that's going to be a piece of it as well. I don't think there's going to be any off the court adjustments. He's got that figured out pretty well.
You were a trailblazer when it came to finding talent in Europe, finding talent around the globe. By the way, that article in Sports Illustrated a few months ago where you were featured in prominently, great article. I'd like to have you back on the show at some point just to talk about that, because I know you have a million stories. But in the 20 years since you found Dirk, there have been a lot of other Euros that have been taken really high in the draft, but they haven't panned out necessarily the way everybody thought. What makes Doncic different from those other guys?
Well, he's got a rare combination of, knowing angles, his ability to, shoot the long ball, his height and athleticism, and his love of passing. I mean, he really, he just loves to get into the cracks and create. It's guys that have those abilities are just such, rare air. And then, to get it in a 6-7 package, a guy that can be, a 3-2 and even, play some point forward is why we think he's a not fail.
We've heard this comparison a lot in the last 12 hours. He's a taller version of Steve Nash. Do you think that's a good comparison?
No, because Steve coming out, honestly, was, not well heralded from Santa Clara. I was in Phoenix when we drafted him, and he was a third backup point guard, and it took him really 2 years. So they almost come from two completely, Doncic comes in and is probably, one of the most well-known, renowned, names globally with what he's done, up until this point. And so, but I see the comparison because, like Steve, big heart, has those same abilities to, get into the paint and create and angles and make his teammates better, hit big shots. He's Nelly's kind of player. I mean, he is a absolute player that the 6'7", guy that can kind of do it all is what he is, and why we're just really excited in the way, as you guys know, the way the game is going. To have guys at his height and abilities to be able to do those things is going to make everyone on the Mavs better next year.
It's Mavericks GM Donnie Nelson with us here on the ticket. And, of course, I'm sure that Doncic was inspired by Dirk. Dirk tweeted at him last night, hey, welcome, and Doncic hit him back as a thank you, legend. There is the tie-in there that people will be talking about, but, hey, that could he have a better mentor as he comes into the league than Dirk?
Well, Dirk was a GM last night. I mean, he was in the war room pretty much throughout, the entire first round. And, I talked to Dirk specifically about, because look, at one point it was touch or go. I mean, we were really happy with 5, and the asking price that came in was significant. So there was a point in the draft where, you're looking at, do we give up all of this stuff, which, for future firsts are valuable, 33 in this year's draft. I mean, Brunson to us he's a player, we had him, I think 2022, somewhere in there. So, those are valuable assets, to a franchise that's trying to accrue assets. Dirk, look, as you guys know, Dirk loves guys that can do those things, and was a big part of the process last night.
The reports were that had it not worked out for you to move up to 3, had you stayed at 5, that you were locked in on Mo Bamba. Is that true?
We liked Mo quite a bit. He wasn't the only name that we were looking at, but that was a strong consideration for us, yes.
You mentioned Jalen Brunson. He was projected as a first-round pick, falls to you at 33. So many things to like about him, his winning ways. He's a leader. He can do a lot of things on the floor. How surprised were you that he was still there at 33?
Yeah, we were shocked. Sometimes there's a lot of stuff that happens towards the end of the first. Certain guys are promised picks because, they shut down the interview and the workout process. There's some picks that are attached to other decisions, whether it's free agency or what have you. Some picks are stash picks that, you're looking to just keep a guy off your roster and put him overseas for bids. So there's lots of reasons why picks go in the late first. But I tell you what, his leadership, his heart, I've had the pleasure of knowing his dad ever since he came out, and coached him in Golden State for a cup of coffee. And you talk about, just winning DNA. We're just really, really blessed and lucky to have a leader like that to learn from JJ and to add to our mix. It's just it's a major get for us.
You talked a little bit about it last night, and I know you're going to turn your attention now fully to free agency and the pursuit of somebody, a center maybe. If you do get somebody this summer that you really like in the middle, where do you think that puts you in the West in the next year or two? How competitive would that roster be?
It's really hard to say. I mean, we know it's thick from top to bottom. Our focus right now is we know we're a young team. We know we're a growing team. We really like some of the building block assets. We know guys are going to skin their knees and, that type. It is definitely a process. What we want to do is we want to take the next step next year. We want to, give these guys a chance to blend and grow together. And, I don't think we're going to be winning the championship, but I will tell you this, that it's going to be exciting. It's going to be really, really exciting to see this young crew play together. And who knows? Rick is capable of anything. He's always knocking on that playoff door, and we get a couple breaks here and there. You just never know.
So you think you will be pretty aggressive in free agency?
Yes, I mean we've got some targets, and they have to be right fits. It's a priority for us to get the right kind of people around the youth that we have on our team. You got a guy, like JJ that teach our young point guards, and obviously Dirk and Harrison. That his leadership is just really, really important. And obviously Wes. And so, we want to get the right kind of guys, and play the right way.
Safe to say you'd be disappointed if you were picking in the top 5 next year in the draft and you hadn't conveyed that pick to Atlanta next year?
Yeah, we're really not worried about that. I mean, to be honest with you, that was a big piece of us raising the protection on that. Was we were measuring next year's crop. But it was a priority for us to keep 22, 33, because we thought we would get something really good down there. And like I said earlier, 33, could be like a middle first round pick next year. It's not a stellar crop that's coming in.
By the way, if Costas is 1/4 of what his brother is, then it looks like you got a nice player in the second round as well.
The freak sequel?
The freak sequel.
We agree. I tell you, his ability to block shots, and he's going to be exciting as well. Whether it's with the Mavericks or with the Texas Legends, probably a little bit of both. He's got some growing to do, but no, we couldn't agree more. We got Spalding as well, 2 really long, tall athletes. And again, that's where the game is going. So we feel we got a couple of pretty good ones there in the second round.
Well, we sense that Maverick fans are fired up and should be. What a night for you, Donnie. We appreciate the time this morning.
Thanks, guys. Can't wait for Summer League. It'll be fun.
All right, we'll see you.